Some relationships don't collapse immediately. Sometimes the damage starts quietly through lies, cheating, emotional distance, jealousy, and manipulation until everything completely falls apart. Today, we're diving into 5 intense movies about betrayal, toxic relationships, obsession, and revenge that become darker the deeper they go. Number 5. Chloe, directed by Adam Egoyan, 2009. Chloe begins with suspicion inside a marriage. Catherine starts believing her husband David may be cheating on her, but instead of confronting him directly, she hires a young escort named Chloe to tempt him and secretly report back everything that happens. At first, it sounds like a simple setup for a relationship drama, but this movie slowly becomes emotionally disturbing in ways you don't expect. The more Catherine listens to Chloe's stories, the more obsessed she becomes with the situation. The line between truth, fantasy, and manipulation starts disappearing. Amanda Seyfried gives one of the most mysterious performances in the movie. Chloe feels innocent one moment and dangerously manipulative the next. You never fully know what she's thinking, and that unpredictability creates constant tension. What I personally like about Chloe is how uncomfortable the movie feels emotionally. Nobody really trusts each other, and every scene feels layered with hidden emotions. Catherine keeps digging deeper because she wants certainty, but instead, she creates chaos inside her own life. The movie also explores insecurity inside long-term relationships in a very realistic way. Sometimes the fear of betrayal can become just as destructive as betrayal itself. That emotional paranoia slowly destroys Catherine's sense of control. By the final act, the movie becomes much darker and more psychological than it first appears. It's less about cheating and more about obsession, loneliness, and emotional instability hidden underneath marriage. Number 4. Closer, directed by Mike Nichols, 2004. Closer is one of the rawest relationship dramas ever made. The movie follows 4 people trapped in a messy cycle of attraction, cheating, jealousy, lies, and emotional manipulation. There are no perfect people here, and honestly, that's what makes the story feel authentic. The cast is incredible. Julia Roberts, Jude Law, Natalie Portman, and Clive Owen all deliver emotionally intense performances that make every conversation feel real. One thing that makes Closer stand out is the dialogue. The characters speak with brutal honesty. They say things most people are afraid to admit out loud. Some conversations genuinely feel uncomfortable because the emotional damage feels so personal and direct. Personally, I think this movie understands how complicated attraction can become. People hurt each other while still wanting love and connection at the same time. The relationships constantly shift between passion, resentment, vulnerability, and cruelty. Clive Owen especially brings a lot of intensity to the movie. His scenes feel explosive because his character refuses to hide his anger and jealousy. The emotional confrontations become some of the strongest moments in the film. Closer also refuses to romanticize cheating. Instead, it shows how dishonesty slowly destroys trust until every relationship becomes emotionally exhausting. Nobody fully wins here. Everyone leaves damaged in some way. It's definitely not a light movie, but if you enjoy relationship dramas that feel emotionally real and painfully honest, Closer is unforgettable. Number 3. Adulterers, directed by H.M. Coakley, 2015. Adulterers get straight into the tension almost immediately. A husband catches his wife cheating in a motel room, and what follows becomes a long emotional confrontation filled with anger, secrets, guilt, and psychological pressure. What surprised me about this movie is how effective the simplicity is. Most of the film takes place in one location, but the emotional intensity keeps building because the characters are forced to confront each other directly with nowhere to escape. At first, the husband seems completely justified in his anger. But as the story unfolds, hidden truths begin coming out, and suddenly the situation becomes much more complicated than it originally seemed. The movie constantly shifts emotionally. One moment you sympathize with one character, then a new revelation changes your perspective again. That emotional uncertainty keeps the tension strong throughout the film. I also think the contained setting helps the movie feel more realistic. There are no huge action scenes or dramatic distractions. Everything depends on dialogue, emotional reactions, and psychological pressure between the characters. The arguments feel messy and personal in a believable way. Nobody speaks perfectly. Nobody behaves rationally all the time. It genuinely feels like watching people emotionally collapse in real time. Adulterers may not be as famous as the other movies on this list, but if you enjoy contained psychological dramas about betrayal and confrontation, it's definitely worth watching. Number 2, A Perfect Murder, directed by Andrew Davis, 1998. A Perfect Murder combines infidelity with wealth, manipulation, and revenge. When a wealthy businessman discovers his wife is having an affair, he decides not to handle it emotionally. Instead, he carefully begins planning the perfect revenge. The movie stars Michael Douglas, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Viggo Mortensen, and their performances really help build the suspense and tension. What I enjoy most about this film is how cold and strategic everything feels. Michael Douglas plays his character with this calm intelligence that makes him intimidating, even when he's speaking softly. You always feel like he's planning something underneath the surface. The movie also has that classic late 90s psychological thriller atmosphere. Expensive apartments, hidden secrets, manipulation, and polished appearances hiding ugly truths underneath. As the revenge plan slowly starts collapsing, the tension becomes even stronger because everyone begins trying to outsmart each other. Trust completely disappears, and paranoia starts taking over every interaction. One thing I like about A Perfect Murder is that it keeps the suspense grounded. The drama comes from the psychological mind games instead of over-the-top action. That makes the betrayal feel more personal and believable. Even years later, the movie still works because manipulation, jealousy, and revenge are timeless themes that never really stop being interesting. Number 1, Gone Girl, directed by David Fincher, 2014. Gone Girl is easily one of the best psychological relationship thrillers ever made. The story begins with a wife mysteriously disappearing, but what follows becomes a dark spiral involving lies, affairs, manipulation, revenge, media obsession, and emotional control. Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike are both excellent, but Rosamund Pike completely steals the movie. Her performance feels calm, intelligent, terrifying, and emotionally unpredictable all at once. What makes Gone Girl so addictive is how constantly the story changes your perspective. Every time you think you understand what's happening, another twist completely changes the situation. The movie keeps getting darker and more psychologically disturbing as it unfolds. Personally, I think what makes the movie truly brilliant is how it explores performance inside relationships. Both characters create fake versions of themselves to keep the marriage alive, and eventually, those lies become emotionally toxic. David Fincher's directing also adds so much tension to every scene. The cold cinematography, unsettling music, and slow pacing create this constant feeling that something terrible is always about to happen. The movie also explores how the media manipulates public perception. People quickly turn relationships into entertainment, and that pressure makes the marriage even more destructive. By the end, Gone Girl feels less like a romance thriller and more like a psychological war between two people trapped together by resentment, manipulation, and revenge. And honestly, that final ending is still one of the most disturbing relationship conclusions in modern thriller movies. These movies prove that betrayal stories are often deeper than just cheating. They explore obsession, insecurity, manipulation, revenge, and the emotional destruction people can cause each other inside relationships. Which movie disturbed you the most, and what toxic relationship thriller should be added next?